Welcome to Dreamscribe, your companion on the journey to peaceful sleep. Before you drift off, don't forget to like and subscribe. It helps this calming community grow. Where in the world are you tuning in from? The world had ended in silence. No explosions, no sirens, just a quiet unraveling of everything. Jake didn't know how long it had been since the last time he'd seen a working city, a grocery store with food, or a stranger who wasn't half-starved and desperate. Now there were only 4 of them. Jake, the reluctant leader, the one who drove the RV and made the hard choices. Mia, a former nurse, the closest thing they had to a medic. Ethan, always questioning everything, never trusting anyone. Lisa, quiet, observant, the one who noticed things before anyone else. The RV was their home, their prison, their last hope. And maybe their grave. Jake gripped the steering wheel, eyes scanning the barren landscape ahead. The road stretched endlessly, cracked pavement swallowed by sand and decay. The sky was gray, thick with something that wasn't quite smoke, wasn't quite fog. Mia sat in the passenger seat, staring at the failing gas gauge. "We're low. We're always low," Ethan muttered from the couch, sharpening a rusty hunting knife. Lisa peered through the window, fingers tapping anxiously against the glass. "I think there's a town up ahead." Jake squinted. Sure enough, buildings loomed in the distance, their silhouettes dark against the fading daylight. "All right," Jake said. "We'll stop. Grab supplies. Get out fast." He didn't say what they were all thinking. No town had been safe. Not for a long time. The RV rolled into silent streets, tires crunching against gravel. Everything was too still. Shattered windows, overturned cars, faded signs swinging in the wind. Jake killed the engine. The RV let out a low groan, like it was protesting. Mia frowned. That sounded weird. Jake ignored her. "Let's move." They split up. Jake and Mia went toward an old supermarket. Ethan and Lisa checked a gas station. Inside the store, the air was thick with dust. Shelves had been picked clean, but Mia found a few cans of food, a dusty bottle of water. Then, something moved behind the counter. Jake froze, hand tightening on his crowbar. A shadow shifted, long and unnatural. Mia's breathing hitched. "Jake!" They took a step back. The RV's horn blared. "Lisa!" They ran. Outside, Lisa stood next to the RV, pale as a corpse. "The doors," she whispered. "They won't open." Jake yanked on the handle. "Locked." Mia tried the back. "Locked." "Ethan?" Jake called. No answer. Lisa pointed. Across the street, Ethan stood motionless near the gas station, staring at something just beyond the buildings. Jake's stomach twisted. "Ethan?" Ethan turned slowly, his face blank. "There's something watching us," he said. Mia stiffened. "Where?" Ethan lifted one hand and pointed. Lisa's voice trembled. "Jake, it's inside the RV." Jake's blood ran cold. He turned, and in the driver's seat, staring back at them through the windshield, was a dark figure wearing his clothes. A second Jake, smiling. Jake's breath caught in his throat. The thing sitting in the driver's seat had his face. His clothes. His hands resting casually on the wheel. But it wasn't him. It smiled, too wide, too unnatural, like someone learning how to mimic human expression. Then, it turned its head slowly, locking eyes with him. Jake staggered back. "What the hell?" Bang. The RV's headlights flickered violently. The doors rattled. Mia grabbed Lisa's arm, yanking her away. "We have to go. Now." Ethan, still frozen in place, whispered, "It's not alone." Jake followed Ethan's gaze, and his stomach plummeted. Figures stood in the shadows between the buildings. They weren't moving, but they were watching. Jake grabbed Lisa and yanked her toward the RV. The doors had been locked moments ago, but now they swung open on their own. Lisa hesitated. "Jake!" "No time," he growled, pushing her inside. Mia and Ethan followed, slamming the doors shut behind them. Jake rushed to the driver's seat. It was empty. The copy of him was gone. Mia's voice trembled. "Where did it go?" Jake didn't answer. He turned the key, expecting the engine to fail, but to his surprise, it roared to life instantly. Too easy. Too wrong. Ethan peered out the window. "They're still watching us." Lisa hugged herself. "Just go. Please." Jake didn't hesitate. He threw the RV into drive and floored it. As they sped away, Mia let out a shaky breath. "What the hell just happened?" Ethan shook his head. "I don't know, but I think." The radio crackled to life. A voice whispered through the speakers, low and distorted. "You shouldn't have left. We're still inside. Lisa let out a small, choked sob. Jake's hands tightened on the wheel, and in the small overhead mirror, just for a split second, he saw himself sitting in the back of the RV, smiling. Jake's hands tightened on the wheel until his knuckles turned white. The overhead mirror reflected his own face, sitting in the back of the RV, smiling. He spun around so fast his seat creaked, but there was nothing there. Just Lisa, curled up in fear, Ethan gripping his knife, and Mia staring at the radio as if it might speak again. Jake turned back to the road, heart pounding. The voice on the radio had whispered, "You shouldn't have left. We're still inside." What the hell did that mean? They drove in silence, the RV's engine humming steadily. Lisa wiped her face, voice hoarse. Did we just see a ghost? A demon? What the hell was that thing? Ethan stared out the window. Whatever it was us. Jake exhaled through his nose, trying to calm his nerves. I don't care what it was. It's behind us now. But Mia wasn't so sure. She watched the passing landscape, her brows furrowing. Something's wrong. Jake sighed. Yeah, no kidding. No, I mean a look. Ethan leaned forward, following her gaze. The road stretched ahead, endless and flat. But the further they drove, the more familiar everything seemed. The same cracked pavement, the same rusted road signs, the same overturned truck on the side of the road. Lisa's voice wavered. We've passed that truck before. Jake felt his stomach drop. That's not possible. Mia's hand trembled as she pointed toward the gas gauge. Full. Jake slammed the brakes. The RV skidded to a stop, tires screeching against the asphalt. He stared at the fuel gauge, his breath catching in his throat. They hadn't stopped for gas. They had been driving for hours. And yet, the tank was still full. Lisa shook her head, panic creeping into her voice. That doesn't make sense. Ethan swallowed. We're not getting anywhere, are we? The radio crackled again. Jake felt his blood turn to ice. A slow, raspy voice whispered through the speakers. You never left. The hairs on the back of Jake's neck stood up. The voice was his own. Lisa burst into tears, burying her face in her hands. Mia squeezed her eyes shut, whispering under her breath, This isn't real. This isn't real. Ethan grabbed Jake's arm, voice tight with fear. What do we do? Jake forced himself to think. The RV wasn't just a vehicle. It was a trap, a loop, a cage on wheels. He took a deep breath and did the one thing that every instinct screamed not to do. He turned the RV around. Lisa's head snapped up. What are you doing? Jake's voice was low. Testing something. He stepped on the gas. The RV roared back in the direction they came. Faster. Faster. The road blurred beneath them. The world outside the windows flickered, like an old, skipping VHS tape. Then, the gas station reappeared, right where it had been before. Lisa let out a choked sob. No, 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 no. Jake slammed the brakes. The RV lurched, sending everyone forward. Outside, under the flickering gas station light, a figure stood waiting. It was Jake. A second Jake. Standing still. Smiling. And this time, he wasn't alone. More figures stepped out of the shadows. More versions of them. Lisa. Mia. Ethan. Copies of them, staring back. Watching. Waiting. Lisa whispered, voice hollow with terror. We were never alone in here. Jake's breath hitched. The figures outside stood perfectly still, bathed in the flickering glow of the gas station's neon sign. Copies of them. Lisa. Mia. Ethan. And him. Exact replicas. Same clothes. Same tired expressions. But their eyes were wrong. Dark. Empty. Like something else was wearing their skin. Then, they smiled. All at once. Lisa let out a small sob. This isn't real, Ethan whispered. This can't be real. Mia's fingers dug into her seat, her nails turning white. What do we do? Jake swallowed hard. We don't move. The copies didn't either. They just stood there watching, waiting. Then slowly one of them took a step forward. Jake's copy. It reached up and knocked on the RV door. 3 slow, deliberate knocks. Tap, tap, tap. Nobody moved. Nobody breathed. The knock echoed through the RV like a gunshot. Lisa was shaking violently. Didon, open it. Ethan gripped his knife tighter. No shit. Jake's heart pounded in his chest. He glanced at Mia, who was staring at the door as if it might vanish if she blinked. Then, from outside, Jake's copy spoke. Let us in. His own voice. Calm. Steady. Wrong. Lisa gasped, clapping a hand over her mouth. Then the others began speaking. Lisa's copy. We've been waiting for you. Ethan's copy, come outside. Mia's copy, you can't leave without us. Mia shook her head, tears brimming in her eyes. We have to go. Now. Jake reached for the keys, jamming them into the ignition. The RV roared to life. Outside, the copies stopped talking. Their smiles widened. Then, they started running. Straight at the RV. Go, go, go! Ethan shouted. Jake slammed the gas pedal. The RV lurched forward, tires screeching against the cracked pavement. Mia screamed as her copy slammed a hand against the passenger window, her face inches away. Lisa's copy was already at the back, clawing at the door. And Jake's copy, it was running alongside the driver's window, matching their speed, still smiling. Jake's heart hammered. He yanked the wheel hard to the left, swerving. His copy disappeared. For a second, he thought they had lost them. Then, bang, something landed on the roof. Lisa screamed. Ethan jumped to his feet. They're on top. The RV shook violently as heavy footsteps moved above them. Jake gritted his teeth. Hold on. He did the only thing he could think of. He swerved the RV off the road. The tires skidded over dirt and gravel, the vehicle jerking violently. Bang! Something fell off the roof, hitting the ground with a sickening crunch. Then, silence. Only the hum of the engine and their ragged breathing filled the space. Lisa sobbed into her hands. Ethan sank into the couch, rubbing his face. Mia exhaled shakily. Did we lose them? Nobody answered, because deep down, they already knew the truth. They weren't running from something outside. The RV itself was cursed, and no matter how far they drove, they would never escape. The RV rattled as it sped down the cracked highway, leaving the gas station and the copies behind. For now, Mia pressed her hands against her face, trying to steady her breathing. Lisa sat on the couch, staring at the floor, rocking slightly. Ethan leaned forward, his knuckles white around the handle of his knife. We need to face the facts. Jake's hands gripped the wheel tightly. And what facts are those? Ethan exhaled slowly. We're not driving this RV anymore. Jake frowned. What the hell are you talking about? Mia's voice was hollow. He's right. She pointed at the GPS screen on the dashboard. Jake's stomach dropped. The screen was blank. No roads. No coordinates. Just a black void. Like they were driving through nothing. Jake slammed on the brakes. The RV screeched to a halt, throwing them all forward. Lisa yelped, gripping the couch. Outside the windows, the world looked the same. The cracked road, the dead trees, the endless gray sky. But something felt wrong. Ethan stepped toward the door, his breath shaky. We should check. Jake grabbed his arm. Check what? Ethan's voice dropped to a whisper. If we're even still in the real world. A cold silence followed. Nobody wanted to be the first to admit it, that maybe they had already crossed over. Mia reached for her watch, pressing the side button. The digital numbers flickered. Midnight. No time. Lisa grabbed her phone. The screen glitched, showing the same thing. We're stuck, she whispered. Even time isn't moving. Jake's mind raced. He reached for the keys, turning the ignition. The RV started instantly, like it wanted them to keep driving. Mia looked around nervously. Didn't you notice? Jake turned to her. Notice what? The gas. Jake's breath caught. The fuel gauge was full again. His hands tightened on the wheel. They hadn't stopped for gas. Hadn't refilled once. And yet, the tank was always full. Like the RV wanted them to keep going. Lisa hugged herself, her eyes wide with terror. Ethan's voice was barely above a whisper. I don't think this is an RV anymore. The air inside the RV felt heavier now, as if something else was sitting there with them. Mia's eyes darted toward the rearview mirror. Her breath hitched. Jake. Jake met her gaze in the mirror. Then, his stomach dropped, because there, in the far back of the RV, sitting in the shadows, was a fifth person, a dark figure, sitting motionless, watching them. Jake spun around. Nothing. The seat was empty, but when he turned back to the mirror, the figure was still there, and this time, it was smiling. Jake's breath caught in his throat. The figure in the rearview mirror hadn't moved. It just sat there, smiling, waiting, but when he turned around, nothing was there. Lisa hugged herself, rocking slightly. I don't like this. I don't like this. Ethan ran a shaky hand through his hair. We need to stop the RV, get out. Walk if we have to. Jake gritted his teeth. We tried that before. Remember? Mia swallowed hard. And we ended up back in the RV. A heavy silence followed. Then the lights flickered. The overhead bulbs buzzed, dimming to a weak, sickly yellow. The air inside the RV grew thick, suffocating. And then, the door to the back of the RV creaked open. Lisa gasped, covering her mouth. The small bathroom door at the back of the RV was swinging open, on its own. Beyond it, only darkness. A deep, guttural whisper slithered through the air. "It's time to go home." Jake's pulse pounded in his ears. "Who said that?" Ethan's knife trembled in his grip. "It wasn't me." Lisa started crying softly. "Please, I want to get out." Mia grabbed Jake's arm. "We have to do something." Jake took a deep breath, then stepped toward the open door. He didn't want to look. He didn't want to see. But something inside him knew. Whatever was in that darkness had been there since the beginning. Waiting. Jake forced himself to look inside. The tiny RV bathroom should have been there. A shower. A sink. A mirror. But there was nothing. Just a black void, stretching infinitely. Then something moved inside it. A shadow shifted forward, and Jake finally saw its face. It was him. Another Jake, standing inside the darkness. But this version of him was wrong. His skin was pale, his eyes sunken, his lips cracked and stitched at the corners, forced into a permanent smile. Jake's copy tilted its head, watching him. Then, it spoke. "You were never supposed to leave." A cold hand grabbed Jake's wrist and yanked him forward. "Jake!" Mia screamed, grabbing his arm. Lisa shrieked. Ethan lunged forward, grabbing onto Jake's shoulder. The force dragging him in was stronger than anything human. Jake's feet slid across the floor, his body being pulled into the void. He struggled, gasping. "Don't let go." The copy of him in the darkness grinned wider. "You have to stay." Then, the others appeared. Inside the black void, Lisa, Mia, and Ethan's copy stood side by side. Their faces were pale and hollow, their mouths stitched into permanent smiles. Lisa's copy whispered, "Stay with us." Mia's copy, "You were always meant to." Ethan's copy, "This is where you belong." The pull grew stronger. Jake's vision blurred. He was slipping, falling. But then, Mia did the only thing she could think of. She kicked the door shut. Slam. The moment the door closed, the force stopped. Jake collapsed onto the floor, gasping for breath. The bathroom was back to normal. The mirror reflected only him. The whispers were gone. But something still felt wrong. Ethan stared at the door. "Tell me we're done. Tell me it's over." Jake's hands were shaking. I don't know." Lisa wiped her tear-streaked face. "What if we're already dead?" A horrible silence filled the RV. Mia finally spoke, voice barely above a whisper. "Then why are we still driving?" Jake's heart stopped. The steering wheel was turning on its own. The gas pedal was pressed down. And outside the window, the road stretched endlessly ahead. No turns. No exits. Just the same cracked pavement, leading them deeper and deeper into nowhere. Forever. Story number 2. The highway stretched into the endless night, empty and quiet except for the hum of the RV's engine. The desert air pressed against the windows, thick with heat, yet inside, a strange chill crept along the floor. Ethan adjusted his grip on the steering wheel, his knuckles tight as the monotony of the road made his eyelids heavy. "We should pull over soon," he muttered, barely suppressing a yawn. From the back, Lucas glanced up from his phone. "There's a rest stop in about 10 miles, he said. "Should be empty this time of night." "Perfect," Mia mumbled, her voice groggy. She shifted under her blanket on the couch, barely looking up. "Just don't forget to lock the doors." Sarah, curled up in the passenger seat, rubbed her arms. "Does it feel colder to anyone else?" No one answered. Ethan exhaled and focused on the road ahead. That's when he saw it. A lone figure standing just beyond the glow of the headlights, motionless on the side of the road. Ethan's breath hitched. "Do you see that?" Sarah sat up, following his gaze. "See what?" The figure stood unnaturally still, barely illuminated by the headlights. Its posture was rigid, its face hidden beneath the brim of an old hat. The air around it seemed thicker, like heat waves distorting the space. Ethan's fingers twitched on the wheel. "That guy, he's just standing there." Lucas leaned forward. "Maybe his car broke down?" "There's no car," Ethan whispered. "Just him." The RV sped past, and for a moment, the figure seemed to move, or rather, shift slightly, as if following them without actually stepping forward. Mia, half asleep, muttered, "Probably just some drifter." "Forget it." Ethan forced himself to look away. When he glanced in the side mirror, the figure was gone. 10 miles later, the RV rolled into a deserted rest stop. A flickering street lamp cast a sickly glow over the cracked pavement. Beyond the parking lot, Nothing but darkness and the whisper of wind through dry grass. "I don't like this place," Sarah said immediately. Lucas stretched. "It's just a rest stop. Let's get some sleep." Ethan shut off the engine and grabbed the keys. "We'll leave at first light." They double-checked the locks, secured the curtains, and one by one, exhaustion took over. The RV settled into silence, only the distant hum of insects in the air. Then, a soft thud outside. Mia stirred. "Did you hear that?" Lucas groaned. "Probably just the wind." Sarah, suddenly wide awake, pulled back the curtain an inch. The figure was standing at the edge of the rest stop. Her breath hitched. Ethan, wake up." He sat up groggily. "What?" Sarah pointed, her hands trembling. "That man. He's here." Ethan followed her gaze and felt his stomach drop. The figure stood perfectly still, closer now, only about 30 feet away. And just like before, no footprints, no car. No sign of how he got there. Lucas sat up, rubbing his eyes. "What's going on?" Ethan didn't answer. He was watching the figure, and he realized something terrifying. It was standing exactly where they had parked just 10 minutes earlier. Mia's voice was barely a whisper. "He wasn't there when we pulled in. We would have seen him." "Right." Ethan grabbed his phone and fumbled with the camera. He zoomed in, trying to get a clearer shot, but the image blurred unnaturally, as if the lens couldn't focus on the figure. "That's not right," he muttered, lowering the phone. Sarah grabbed his arm. "Let's just drive. Right now." Ethan hesitated. His rational side told him it was just a man, maybe a wanderer or a trick of the dim light. But deep inside, he knew something was wrong. Lucas, trying to play it cool, scoffed. "Fine, let's go. If it makes you all feel better." Ethan started the engine. The headlights flicked on. The figure was gone. They leave the rest stop, shaken but trying to move on. But as they reach their next destination, the figure is already there. The RV roared down the highway, its tires humming against the cracked asphalt. The air inside felt thicker, like the oxygen had turned stale. No one spoke much after the encounter at the rest stop, but the tension sat in the cramped space between them like a fifth passenger. Ethan kept his eyes locked on the road, hands gripping the wheel tight enough to turn his knuckles white. He wasn't sure if it was exhaustion or fear, but something was gnawing at his nerves. The figure from the rest stop wouldn't leave his mind. How had he appeared out of nowhere? And where had he gone? Lucas, stretching lazily in the passenger seat, yawned. "You guys need to relax. It was just some drifter. Creepy, yeah, but harmless." Mia shot him a look. "Then how do you explain the footprints?" Lucas shrugged. "Maybe we just didn't notice them before." Sarah shifted in her seat, pulling her jacket tighter around herself. "I don't know. It felt wrong." Outside, the landscape stretched wide and empty, the road swallowed by darkness, except for the twin beams of the headlights. The occasional road sign zipped past, but the farther they drove, the less familiar everything became. "Check the GPS," Ethan muttered. "See how far the next town is." Sarah swiped at the screen, but a chill ran up her spine. The screen was blank. "That's weird," she whispered. Mia leaned forward. "What do you mean?" Sarah turned the phone toward them. No map. No road. Just an empty, unmarked screen. Lucas scoffed. "Great. No signal out here?" "Typical." But Ethan shook his head. "No, that's not right. GPS should still track the road. It just wouldn't load new routes." He reached for his own phone, but it had the same issue. No data. No map. No nothing. Sarah's voice wavered. "Where the hell are we?" Mia's fingers curled against her seat. "Did we miss a turn?" Ethan exhaled sharply and glanced at the rearview mirror. The highway stretched into the black void, unbroken and endless. But something felt off. He adjusted the mirror slightly, his stomach twisting. Something was back there. A shape, barely visible in the distance, standing in the middle of the road. "Oh my God," Mia whispered. "No way." The figure had returned. Sarah's breathing quickened. "It's him. It's the same guy. How the hell?" Lucas turned, squinting out the back window. "That's impossible. We've been driving for miles. There's no way he's been following us on foot." Ethan's pulse pounded. Did they ever actually leave him behind? Mia yanked the curtain shut. "Don't look at him. Just drive." Ethan didn't need to be told twice. His foot pressed harder on the gas. The speedometer climbed 60, 70, 80 miles per hour. The road ahead stretched endlessly, swallowed by the night. Lucas checked his watch. The hands were frozen. Sarah's voice trembled. "I don't think we're on the same road anymore." A road sign loomed in the distance, its reflective surface catching the headlights. Finch Hollow, 10 miles. Ethan's brow furrowed. That wasn't on the map earlier. Mia checked the GPS again. Still blank. Sarah whispered, "Has anyone ever heard of Finch Hollow?" Lucas shook his head. "Nope. And I don't like this." They passed the sign, and suddenly the air changed. The night felt deeper, thicker, as though they had passed through an invisible wall. The headlights seemed to illuminate less of the road, like the darkness was closing in. Then they saw it. A gas station, dimly lit, its neon sign flickering weakly. "Finally," Ethan muttered. "We need to stop." Mia's hand shot out. "No, keep driving." Ethan hesitated. "We need fuel." Mia's voice dropped to a whisper. "Look at the pumps." The others followed her gaze. The pumps were old, rusted, covered in dust, like they hadn't been used in years. And standing beneath the buzzing lights, just beyond the edge of the station's glow, was the figure. "Drive," Sarah whispered. "Now." Ethan's heart pounded. He pressed the gas and sped past the station, keeping his eyes locked on the road ahead. Lucas let out a shaky breath. He was waiting for us. He knew we'd stop there. Mia covered her face with her hands. "He's always ahead of us, no matter where we go." Sarah turned back toward the rear window, her voice barely audible. "What does he want?" No one answered. But the road ahead twisted, the trees lining the highway growing denser, their branches stretching toward the RV like fingers. And for the first time, they saw headlights in the distance, coming toward them. They're deep into unfamiliar territory now. The road has changed, their phones are useless, and the figure is no longer just watching. It's waiting for them. The RV barreled down the darkened highway, the road stretching endlessly ahead. The tension inside was suffocating, a silent agreement between them that whatever was happening was beyond explanation. Ethan's hands were locked on the wheel, his knuckles white. He hadn't dared to look in the rearview mirror since they'd passed the gas station. He didn't want to see if the figure was still there. Sarah sat stiffly in the passenger seat, eyes darting between the road and the windows, every passing shadow making her heart race. "Where are those headlights?" she muttered. They were right there. Lucas peered out the back window. Nothing. The approaching headlights that had seemed so close moments ago were now gone, like they had never been there. Mia pulled her blanket tighter around herself. "I don't like this. We should have stopped. Maybe we could have gotten help." Ethan exhaled sharply. "From who?" "That gas station was abandoned. And you saw him. He was waiting." Mia shuddered at the memory. The figure, motionless under the dim lights, as if expecting them. A sudden burst of static filled the RV. Sarah yelped as the radio, which had been turned off, flared to life on its own. The sound was garbled, voices overlapping in a distorted mess. Ethan twisted the knob, trying to shut it off, but the volume only increased. "Don't stop," a voice crackled through the static. "Not real, leave now." The words sent a chill through them. "Who the hell was that?" Lucas whispered. Mia pulled her knees to her chest. That wasn't a normal station, was it?" Ethan's jaw clenched. "No." Sarah swallowed hard. "Someone's trying to warn us." The static cut out, leaving only silence. Lucas turned back toward the window, and his stomach dropped. Oh God! The figure was there, standing on the shoulder of the road, perfectly still, its hat casting a deep shadow over its face. Mia let out a sharp gasp. How is he here? We've been driving for miles." Sarah covered her mouth. "He's getting closer." Ethan stepped harder on the gas, pushing the RV past 90 miles per hour. The figure blurred as they passed, but as they sped away, Mia peeked out the rear window and let out a choked sob. The figure had turned, facing them, watching. Lucas's voice cracked. "This isn't real. It can't be real." "Then explain it." Sarah snapped, her breathing heavy. "How does someone appear at every stop? How do they just show up, out of nowhere?" Mia whispered, "He's inside." The group fell silent. Lucas hesitated. "What did you say?" Mia's eyes were wide, unfocused. She wasn't looking at the windows anymore. She was looking at the reflection in the microwave door. There, barely visible in the glass, was another figure sitting in the farthest seat of the RV. A passenger who hadn't been there before. They are no longer being followed. The silent passenger is inside. The rules of reality are bending, and their fear is turning to full-blown panic. Mia's breath came in short, shallow gasps as she stared at the microwave's reflective surface. The figure was inside the RV. No, she whispered, her hands trembling. "This isn't happening." Ethan's knuckles whitened on the steering wheel. "What do you see?" His voice was tight, controlled, but barely. Mia pointed at the reflection. The shape was seated at the back of the RV, perfectly still. Its hat was tilted downward, its features lost in shadows. But it was there. It had always been there. Lucas took a shaky step forward, glancing toward the back of the RV. Nothing. There's nothing there, Mia, he said, though his voice wavered. Mia shook her head violently. Then why can I still see it in the reflection? Sarah grabbed a hand mirror from the dashboard and hesitantly held it up. There it was. Holy shit, she breathed. It's real. Ethan's heartbeat thundered in his ears. He turned the rearview mirror just enough to see the impossible figure seated in the back row, silent, unmoving, watching. The radio crackled to life once more, a warped, broken voice whispering through the static. You picked me up. A wave of nausea hit Ethan. No, he muttered. We didn't stop. We never stopped. The radio hissed again. Yes, you did. Sarah's fingers dug into her arm. We didn't stop, but what if we let it in without knowing? Mia's face drained of color. We did stop. At the rest area. We all got out. Lucas frowned. So? Mia's eyes filled with panic. Did any of us check the RV before we got back in? Silence. Sarah clutched her stomach. It was waiting for us. It climbed inside when we weren't looking. Lucas turned to the back of the RV again, his hands shaking. Okay, if it's here, what does it want? The lights flickered, the air turning thick and stale. The reflection in the microwave shifted slightly. It was standing now. The voice over the radio hissed, slow and deliberate. I need a seat. Ethan's throat tightened. A seat for what? The reflection moved closer. Sarah choked on her words. A seat for one of us. Lucas's hands clenched into fists. It's replacing someone. The RV lurched suddenly, the headlights flickering wildly. The wheel twisted in Ethan's hands as if something else was trying to steer. The radio let out a burst of laughter, warped and unnatural. One must leave. Sarah's breathing turned ragged. It wants one of us to disappear. The figure tilted its head in the reflection, waiting. The RV kept driving, but something was changing. The world outside wasn't the same road anymore. They now know the truth. The silent passenger is choosing one of them to take its place. But who will it be? And can they escape before one of them vanishes forever? The RV shuddered violently as Ethan fought to keep it steady, his hands gripping the wheel like a lifeline. The air inside felt thicker, as though the very space around them was collapsing inward. Mia screamed as the lights flickered again. It's getting closer. The reflection in the microwave wasn't in the back anymore. Lucas's breath came in short gasps. He turned, half expecting to see the figure standing behind him, but there was nothing. And yet, in every reflective surface, the microwave, the windows, even the black screen of Ethan's phone, it was moving. Ethan's voice was strained. It's choosing. We have to do something. The radio crackled to life, the voice inside now sharper, demanding. One must leave. Sarah scrambled backward, pressing herself against the door. We're not letting it take anyone. The RV jerked to the side as if something unseen had grabbed the wheel. The tires screeched against the asphalt, sending them careening toward the edge of the highway. Lucas lunged forward and grabbed the wheel, helping Ethan straighten the RV just in time. The moment they regained control, the shadows inside the reflections flickered erratically. It's angry, Mia choked out. It doesn't want to wait anymore. The voice in the radio laughed, a warped, metallic sound. One must leave. The RV lurched again, the lights flashing wildly. The temperature inside dropped to an unbearable chill, frost creeping along the windows. We have to give it something. Mia cried. What if we just stop the RV and run? And go where? Lucas snapped. It's already inside. Sarah's eyes darted around the space, desperation setting in. What if we throw something out? Something to make it think one of us is gone. Ethan's breath caught. Or someone. They all froze. No, Mia whispered. You're not seriously saying. The radio screeched. The figure in the reflection was now standing behind Lucas. A single word crackled through the speakers. Choose. Lucas turned to Ethan, his expression torn between fear and resolve. We don't have a choice. It's not stopping. Ethan's heart pounded. Every nerve in his body screamed to fight, to resist, but the RV was turning against them, the entity tightening its grip. Sarah's eyes darted toward the emergency exit near the back. We could fake it out. Lucas's jaw tightened. What do you mean? We open the door. We throw something, anything, and make it look like one of us is gone. Maybe it'll take the bait. Mia grabbed a bag from the floor, stuffing it with her jacket and anything heavy she could find. We don't have time. It's this or. the lights went out. Total darkness swallowed the RV. The air shifted, as if something massive had just entered the space completely. A voice right behind them. One. Must. Leave. Sarah yanked the door open. The wind howled outside, the void of the highway stretching into endless black. Now, Ethan shouted. Lucas threw the decoy bag out with all his strength. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, the RV stopped shaking. The air lifted, the choking pressure easing. The figure was gone from the reflections. The radio crackled once more. Farewell. They tricked the entity, but did it really leave? Or did it take something intangible from them? The silence feels unnatural now, and the road ahead seems too empty. The RV rolled forward in silence, the wheels gliding over the endless stretch of asphalt. No one spoke. No one dared to. The only sound was the rhythmic hum of the engine, an eerie contrast to the chaos that had unfolded just moments before. Sarah swallowed hard, staring at the road ahead. Did we do it? She finally whispered. Ethan didn't answer right away. His hands were still locked onto the wheel, his knuckles pale from the pressure. He hadn't checked the rearview mirror. He wouldn't. Lucas shifted in his seat, his breath unsteady. I don't feel anything anymore. That pressure, it's gone. Mia slowly uncurled herself from the corner of the RV, her body stiff. We tricked it, she murmured, almost as if she needed to convince herself. We made it think one of us left. It's over. But was it? The tension should have lifted, but instead, a strange emptiness settled over them. The air felt too light, as if something fundamental had shifted. Ethan finally chanced a glance at the rearview mirror. Nothing was there. No figure. No shadow. Just the empty interior of the RV, dimly lit by the dashboard glow. It's really gone, he muttered. Sarah exhaled a shaky breath, nodding. Then why do I still feel like something's wrong? Lucas turned to Mia. Maybe it's just the paranoia. We were all on edge. It's going to take a while to shake off. Mia didn't respond. She was staring at the microwave's reflective surface, brow furrowed. What is it? Ethan asked. She hesitated. There are only 3 of us in the reflection. Lucas's stomach dropped. He spun around, looking between them. What? That's impossible. We're all here. But Mia didn't look at him. She looked at Sarah. Sarah, whose face had gone pale. Sarah, who hadn't spoken since asking if they were safe. Ethan turned fully in his seat, his heartbeat quickening. Sarah? She blinked slowly, as if waking from a deep sleep. Then, in a voice just slightly off, she murmured, Yes. Mia's hand clamped over her mouth. The entity had never left. It had taken its seat. Lucas's breath came in short gasps. No, we faked it out. We. Sarah, or whatever was inside her, smiled faintly. You were so close. But the road always takes its toll. Ethan's grip on the wheel tightened. We're getting her back. There is no back, the thing in Sarah's place murmured. She made room for me, just like someone before her did, and someone after you will. Mia shook her head furiously. We're not letting it happen. We can fight this. The RV's radio crackled once more, a final message whispering through the static. See you down the road. The headlights flickered. The road stretched endlessly ahead, and somewhere deep inside, Sarah screamed. As the RV sped into the darkness, Ethan refused to stop. He didn't care if the road never ended. He wasn't stopping, but the reflection in the microwave remained wrong. And when Mia dared one last glance at the rearview mirror, she swore she saw another shape sitting behind them. Waiting. The silent passenger had never left. Story number 3. The sky stretched wide and empty, a vast expanse of pale blue over the canyon. Jake kept one hand on the steering wheel, the other adjusting the RV's air conditioning, which had suddenly stopped working. Damn thing, he muttered. Mia sat in the passenger seat, scrolling through the map on her phone. According to this, the road should take us through the canyon and back onto the highway in an hour or 2. Good, Ethan said from the back, stretching his legs. I don't like the look of this place. Lisa, sitting by the window, tapped the glass. It's weirdly quiet. Jake frowned. Now that she mentioned it, the radio had stopped playing. The GPS screen was frozen. Even the clock on the dashboard had stopped at 12 a.m. Lisa glanced at her watch, also frozen at 12 o'clock. Okay, that's creepy, she whispered. They continued down the road, the RV's tires kicking up dust. The canyon walls loomed taller, the sunlight turning a dull, golden hue as the cliffs closed in around them. Mia sighed. It's probably a signal dead zone. We're in the middle of nowhere. Yeah, but watches don't need a signal, Lisa muttered. Ethan scoffed. Just a coincidence. Then, Jake blinked. Something was off. He had been watching the road ahead, following the curve of the canyon, but now, it looked the same as it did 5 minutes ago. The same rock formations, the same dead tree leaning against a boulder, the same cracks in the pavement. "We've been here before," Lisa said suddenly. Jake felt a chill creep up his spine. "No, that's not possible." Mia grabbed her notebook and quickly scribbled a word onto a page. Then, she ripped the page out and crumpled it, throwing it onto the road behind them. They kept driving. 5 minutes later, Lisa gasped. The crumpled paper was back on the dashboard, exactly where Mia had left it. A deep, unsettling silence filled the RV. Jake's hands tightened on the wheel. Mia swallowed hard. "I think we're stuck." The paper sat on the dashboard, crumpled in the exact way Mia had thrown it out. No one spoke. Lisa hugged herself, her breath shaky. No, that's not possible." Ethan grabbed the paper, uncrumpling it. The word Mia had written was still there. "Loop." Jake swallowed hard. "That means we're not moving forward," Mia finished. "The road is repeating itself." Mia grabbed her notebook again. "I'm testing something." She flipped to a clean page, writing, "Test 1, place object outside RV." She tore the page out, set it on the floor, and stared at it. For a few seconds, nothing happened. Then Jake blinked, and the paper was gone. Lisa let out a sharp breath. Where did it go? Mia turned back to her notebook. Her eyes widened. A new line had been added underneath her writing, but in handwriting that wasn't hers. "You can't leave." Lisa let out a soft whimper. Jake's fingers curled around the steering wheel. That wasn't there before. Mia's hands shook. "I know." Ethan jumped to his feet. "Screw this. We're leaving." Jake nodded, shifting the RV into reverse. The tires kicked up dust as the RV sped backward down the canyon road. 5 minutes passed. 10. 15. And then, Lisa let out a strangled noise. "The tree," she whispered. "The same dead tree." Mia turned, her face pale. Jake's stomach dropped. Ahead of them, on the road they had just reversed down, was the same twisted tree. They were back where they started. Lisa's voice cracked. "This isn't real. This isn't real." Ethan kicked the dashboard. "How do we get out?" The radio crackled. For the first time since they entered the canyon, it turned on by itself. A voice, low, distorted, stretched like an echo across time, whispered through the speakers. "You don't leave, you stay forever." The RV's engine sputtered. And then, the headlights died. Darkness swallowed them whole. The RV plunged into darkness. Lisa let out a sharp gasp, gripping the seat. "The lights! Why did the lights go out?" Jake twisted the key, trying to restart the engine. Nothing. The only sound was the rapid breathing inside the RV, and the distant hum of the radio still crackling with static. Then, a voice, deep and stretched, like something speaking through layers of time, whispered, "Step outside, see the truth." Lisa shook her head violently. "No. No way." Ethan grabbed his knife. "We are not opening that door." Mia's hands trembled as she reached for her notebook, flipping to a new page. She wrote, "What happens if we leave the RV?" For a few seconds, nothing happened. Then, right before their eyes, words began appearing beneath Mia's question, as if an invisible hand was writing them. Time stops. Mia's blood ran cold. She scribbled another question. "And if we stay inside?" The answer came quickly. "Time forgets you." The hairs on Jake's arms stood on end. Something is writing back. Lisa turned to the window, her breath hitching. "There's someone out there." Jake snapped his head up. Through the windshield, standing on the ridge of the canyon above them, a figure stood watching. It was tall, motionless, featureless. Ethan cursed under his breath. That thing wasn't there before. Then, as if it had heard him, the figure took a step closer. Lisa's voice cracked. "Oh my God!" Mia grabbed Jake's arm. "We need to go." Jake twisted the key again. The engine roared to life instantly. Too fast. Too easy. Like the RV wanted them to keep going. He didn't hesitate. Jake slammed the gas pedal. The RV lurched forward, speeding down the road. Lisa sobbed softly into her hands. "What's happening to us?" Ethan gritted his teeth. "I don't think we were supposed to find this place." Mia stared into the mirror. The figure was still standing on the cliff, still watching. And then, it waved. Mia's chest tightened. "I think it's waiting for us." Jake kept his foot pressed on the gas, the RV barreling through the canyon's endless road. The headlights cut through the darkness, illuminating only the same cracked pavement they'd driven over again and again. Lisa sat curled on the couch, whispering to herself. Ethan gripped his knife. Mia kept staring at the mirror. Because she knew, even if they didn't see it, the figure was still there. Waiting. Watching. Waiting for them to understand. Ethan rubbed his face. All right, let's go over this again. Lisa looked up, eyes red. What's the point? We're stuck. Ethan ignored her. We drove into this canyon a few hours ago. At some point, the time on the RV froze. We've tried turning around, but we always end up back where we started, Jake muttered. Mia nodded. And whenever we try to leave the RV for too long, She hesitated. The radio crackled. A distorted voice, almost like hers, whispered, "You disappear." Lisa let out a sharp breath. Mia's hands shook as she grabbed her notebook. She wrote one more question. What happens when time forgets you? The answer appeared slowly. Look outside. A cold chill ran through her. She lifted her head. Jake. Stop the RV. Jake hesitated. Mia, we can't just. Stop the damn RV, she screamed. Jake slammed the brakes. The RV screeched to a halt. Everything went silent. And then, they saw them. The headlights illuminated the side of the road. For the first time, they noticed the figures standing along the canyon's edge. Dozens. No, hundreds. Motionless. Frozen. Lisa's breath hitched. Ethan gripped his knife tighter. They weren't there before. Jake stepped closer to the window. Holy shit! Mia covered her mouth. Because now she understood. The figures weren't just random people. They were other travelers. Lost souls who had driven into the canyon and never escaped. Some were standing by vehicles that had rusted down to their frames. Others stood halfway out of their cars, their faces blank, eyes hollow. And then Lisa let out a sob. Because one of the figures standing near the RV was her. A second Lisa. Frozen, motionless, staring at the RV like she had always been there. Her lips parted, and in a voice that didn't belong to her, the second Lisa whispered, "Time forgot me." Lisa screamed. Jake slammed the gas. The RV roared forward, speeding away from the figures. Mia squeezed her eyes shut. Because no matter how far they drove, she knew. They would see them again. Because the RV was still moving. And time hadn't forgotten them yet. Lisa was still sobbing. She curled against the couch, rocking slightly, her breath coming in short gasps. That wasn't me. It wasn't me. It wasn't me. Mia stared ahead, unblinking, her fingers gripping her notebook so tight her knuckles turned white. Ethan ran a hand over his face, his jaw clenched. That was you, Lisa. Or some version of you. Jake's hands were locked onto the steering wheel, his foot pressed hard on the gas. I don't care what it was. We're getting out of here. Lisa let out a broken laugh. Are we? Are we really? No one answered. Because they all knew the truth. They were still trapped. And time was still holding on to them. The road ahead began to change. The rocky canyon walls opened up into a vast, empty desert. And in the distance, a city. Lisa gasped. Do you see that? Mia leaned forward, her heart pounding. There it was. Tall buildings, glowing streetlights, the faint silhouette of life. A way out. Jake's pulse raced. Holy shit. We found it. Ethan's face twisted in doubt. It's too easy. Lisa shook her head violently. I don't care. We go. We go now. Jake didn't hesitate. He floored it. The RV roared forward, speeding toward the city. Mia kept her eyes locked ahead, hope rising in her chest. They were going to make it. They were going to. Then she glanced at the rearview mirror. Her stomach dropped. The city wasn't getting closer. It was staying exactly where it was. No matter how fast they drove. Mia's hands went ice cold. Jake. Stop the RV. Lisa shook her head. No. No, don't listen to her. Mia's voice rose. Stop the damn RV. Jake slammed the brakes. The RV skidded to a stop, the tires kicking up dust. Everyone stared ahead. The city lights flickered. Then, they disappeared, replaced by the empty canyon road. Lisa let out a broken sob. It was never real. Ethan slammed his fist against the wall. Then what the hell do we do now? Mia slowly turned the rearview mirror toward Jake. Her voice was barely above a whisper. We were never supposed to leave. Jake's jaw tightened. No, we're not playing into this. But then Mia pointed at the mirror again. Look. Jake hesitated. Then slowly he lifted his eyes, and his blood ran cold. The mirror reflected the inside of the RV perfectly. Except for one thing. In the mirror, the door was open, and someone was standing inside, watching them. Jake spun around. The door was shut. The figure wasn't there, but in the mirror. It took a step closer. Lisa's breath hitched. Oh my God! The figure moved again. Closer. And then it reached for them. The lights flickered. The engine sputtered. And one by one, the clocks in the RV started moving again. The clocks inside the RV started moving again. Tick, tick, tick. Each second felt unnatural, like reality was being forced back into motion. Jake's heartbeat pounded in his ears. Lisa was shaking uncontrollably, whispering, "It's inside. It's inside." Ethan gripped his knife tightly, his eyes darting between the mirror and the door. Mia swallowed hard. The figure in the mirror wasn't just standing there anymore. It was watching them, waiting. And then, it spoke. A voice that was all of theirs at once, layered and distorted. "You should not be here." Lisa let out a small, broken sob. "We know, but we can't leave." The lights flickered violently. The figure's mouth moved again. "Then one of you must stay. The price of escape." The words hung in the air like a death sentence. Jake felt cold dread seep into his bones. What does that mean? Mia was breathing heavily, her mind racing. "It's a trade. We were never supposed to enter this place, and now it won't let us leave unless we..." She couldn't finish the sentence. Ethan's grip on his knife tightened. "No. No way in hell." Lisa shook her head violently. "We're not doing this. There has to be another way." The figure in the mirror tilted its head, as if amused. "Time demands balance." Lisa's voice cracked. "No. No, please." The RV lurched suddenly, throwing them forward. The headlights flashed wildly, illuminating the canyon road ahead. And standing there, blocking the road, were dozens of figures. All of them trapped travelers. All of them waiting. Mia's breath caught in her throat. They're like us." Ethan clenched his teeth. "No. They're the ones who never left." Then the figures moved. They all lifted their hands and pointed directly at Lisa. Lisa screamed. Jake stepped in front of her. "No, you can't have her." The figures in the mirror smiled. The entire RV trembled. Mia grabbed her notebook, her mind spinning. There's got to be a loophole, a way to break the cycle. Lisa's breath hitched. What if they already chose? Jake frowned. "What?" Lisa looked up, tears streaming down her face. "I saw myself back there. I saw what happens." Mia's stomach dropped. Lisa took a deep breath, stepping toward the mirror. "If I stay," she whispered, "will you let them go?" The figures didn't speak. They only nodded. The RV shuddered. The radio crackled, and in a voice barely above a whisper, the mirror reflected back. "Time forgets you." Lisa turned to them, a soft smile on her lips. "Don't look back." Then, she stepped through the door. Jake lunged after her, but the moment Lisa crossed the threshold, the door slammed shut. Ethan pounded on it. "Lisa! Lisa, open the door." But when Mia looked through the window, she was gone. No sign of her outside. Just an empty canyon. The RV's engine roared to life. The headlights flickered, and suddenly, the road ahead was clear. Jake's hands shook as he gripped the wheel. The RV moved on its own, speeding forward. The canyon began to shift, the shadows breaking apart, the sky turning bright. And then, the exit appeared. A real road. The highway. Jake hit the gas. The RV burst out of the canyon, sunlight blinding them. Time snapped back into place. The clock ticked forward. Mia's phone buzzed with a new signal. They were out. They were free. But Lisa was gone, and none of them could remember her face. Days passed. Jake, Mia, and Ethan sat around a campfire, staring into the flames. Something was missing. Someone. Ethan frowned. How many of us were there before? Mia hesitated. 4. Jake stared into the night, his heart heavy. Then why does it feel like we left someone behind? Mia's hands trembled, because somewhere deep in the canyon, a girl sat alone in an empty RV, waiting, trapped, forgotten, forever. Lisa became part of the time loop. The others escaped, but their memories of Lisa faded. Somewhere, the RV is still there waiting for new travelers to enter.